Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Not Even the King. An introduction. The podcast explores sibling relationships within a family business and whether or not there is a difference in a family setting. I have looked at a number of reference sources relating to the fallout when a sibling leaves the family business, and in doing so, explored and will make a number of personal observations as to how the UK royal family responded to one person leaving the family, not least because they did not regard or treat Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, as a member of the family or as an employee. And if the truth be known, they used and continue to regard Meghan like bait that hunters and their dogs go after for sport. No regard to the suffering. It is all a game in royal circles. Hunter and prey mentality. Seek and destroy the runaway slaves. The fact that a blue blood prince chose his wife and family over his family meant that he was regarded as a traitor by some. And in terms of the royal family, they were happy to increase the risk to life and limb of the Sussex family and to remove security at the same time. In some area of their puddled brains, they believed that the same prince would return to the fold, minus wife and children, and happily be the royal whipping boy for the family, and the second-in-line's footstool, for as long as the second-in-line needed him to lie there, and be walked all over every day. At the heart of this podcast is the very different value base of the members of the British royal family and the family who escaped from the plantation behind gilded gates. Added to that, the slave master mentality as a response to them leaving. The naivety and or arrogance that no one else in the world would notice, and if they did, the monarchy would be supported. After all, they are royalty and all that. Let's just touch on the different value base for the UK royal family and the Sussexes. This podcast will prove that if your guidebook is based on master and slave mentality, and you regard people who work for a living to be less than, and people of colour to be less than the working class group, and that they are on a par with some kind of alien species, then you have a problem. If you also believe that due to the luck of birth and the family line you emanate from makes you better than someone who works for a living, and their rewards are based on hard work and not the birth canal they emerge from, the foundations for your existence and your belief system are inherently weak, and are only in existence because the majority of the population are not given the opportunity to decide whether or not they wish to have a non-elected figurehead family at our expense. A monarchy exists because it is protected by those in the top echelons of UK society, a minute percentage of the population controlling and owning the majority of the wealth of the country, and yet is subsidised by the majority of the population who are looked down upon because they don't belong to the aristocrat set. This infrastructure and culture at the top end of society is one of the main reasons why the UK is being viewed differently in recent decades, and definitely since 2016. The arrogance and belief systems held in the aristocratic set is one of the main anchors which will eventually pull the monarchy down. The caucasity that a monarchy in the UK was confident that the hunter and prey activity against a non-UK citizen would be of no interest to anyone. But they are discovering this is one of the first mistakes. The treatment of the first person of colour into that protected white space was its biggest mistake, and will take decades for the reverberations of the damage done on so many levels to begin to come back from, and it will be forever in the literature of history as to how a royal family damaged itself from a weakened base due to societal changes regarding a monarchy at all, out of outdated views and practices in which they were intent on pursuing anyway, in the belief that the monarchy would always come out on top of any argument. It also had the perceived benefit of its propaganda arm in the form of the nation's media giants, both printed, televised and online, all delivering mainly right-wing rhetoric where its own population consisted of people of colour, who were clearly seen as less than, along with the entity known as the Commonwealth, watching things unfold regarding the treatment of the Duchess of Sussex, and ultimately not liking what they could see developing day after day, month after month, and year after year. The Commonwealth is unlikely to exist in its current form for much longer. Members of the royal family found out face-to-face with uninvited visits to Commonwealth countries under the guise of celebrating the Queen's 70 years on the throne. We have discussed these scenes previously, but needless to say, none of them did the UK monarchy any good. And to insist on visiting nations where some explicitly informed the UK that they saw no reason to celebrate the Queen's 70 years, as there was very little to show for those 70 years. The coloniser attitude took over, as usual, and the UK royal family members were sent to soft-talk the nations into staying with its head of state. The images circulated around the world were beyond cringeworthy and disappointing. In fact, they were deeply offensive to reasonable people of all ethnic origins, not to mention the vast expense created by insisting on visiting places as if they had the right to, regardless of what the countries in question wanted. Any notion that the British royal family could prance about in any part of the world and play coloniser-in-chief without any comeback was about to give new meaning to meet and greet. Every wound that we know was inflicted upon Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, was felt by every person of colour, excluding those few who think that they are white. The coconuts will see the light in due course, but never admit it. They are not our concern. We know exactly the rules of the game being played are very different to the official "we welcomed her with open arms" mantra. We also suspect the wounds and harm done away from the public eye, and for certain it involved all layers of staff and definitely senior royals, proven by the lengths the family is prepared to go to deflect away from the truth and have the population focus on hating one individual and eventually the runaway prince as well, because he chose a black woman over the coloniser family. This podcast will show and prove how starting off from completely different value-based thinking and views on ethnic minorities, true views, not the ones expressed through gritted teeth or robotic grins, following any faux pas where the true view is on show or expressed accidentally. The fact that UK media personnel can develop memory loss about why they wrote certain things, but anywhere from minutes to 24 hours have a road to Damascus moment, and all is changed. It's about time the UK media and its business family realised that they do not and cannot inflict that memory loss on the international community, and certainly not the international press. So to repeat, the stark differences in the value base that the UK British royal family and its escapees from the plantation are the very reason at the heart of this approach why the royal family is failing. Every act of sabotage and creating fake hashtags, which, by the way, they did not even know how to use until recently, and every effort at UK taxpayers' expense to try and denigrate the Sussexes will only continue to add to adding vast numbers to the Sussex support base every time. It is public knowledge when each trick backfires, and it attracts more people to take an interest. Increasing numbers are stepping forward to add to the squad in vast numbers. Labelling us in venomous style and trying to give the impression we are low-life forms of some kind has the same effect in terms of attracting support. So carry on. The British royal family would be better off trying to rebuild their brand, rather than use public funds to stalk and harass the Sussex family, merely for earning their own money and buying a home of their own, and leading a very successful and growing philanthropic organisation. The UK monarchy is trying to destroy the Sussex brand and want them to fail, so that it is less obvious how irrelevant the rest of the British royal family really are. Every act against the Sussexes results in devaluation of the monarchy. Focus on your own institution and build your own unique brand, because copying and pasting the Sussexes whilst at the same time trying to destroy them does not equate in the mind of any intelligent person. The world is watching the self-destruction of the UK monarchy in full play. The second in line is not concerned in any matters of state or any of the real suffering of the UK, the people of the UK, who are experiencing really difficult times at the moment. It seems like every waking moment is spent on inciting hate against his brother for having the nerve to marry a black woman, and an accomplished and highly intelligent woman at that, was too much for the fragile egos to take. The cruelty and abusive behaviour by the British royal family and associates for almost 6 years now has been shameful. In 3 of those years, it was abuse on an American citizen on UK soil. The damage done, and continues to be done by the UK to another nation's citizen, where the family work and pay taxes in the USA, and the children are dual nationality, will ultimately prove to be a serious flaw in this plan to seek and destroy people regarded as targets, when they do not fall into line with the UK monarchy. All the UK people get is empty words and gestures. The right-wing behaviour sanctioned and endorsed by the top tiers in UK society is harming the nation and its position in the world, which is already on the decline since the UK decided to leave the European Union. And 6 years later, the knock-on effect of that decision is causing hardship, and with the added factor of a global pandemic, much of the country's suffering could have been avoided. So, with that, let's look at the lyrics of a song. I have included a YouTube link in the article with the writer and performer, and see whether or not each time you hear it, if you are like me, I now think of the sentiments in this song as if they're being spoken by Meghan or Harry. The lyrics are from a song called Not Even the King, the title of this podcast, which was written and published in 2012. It is a song by Alicia Keys and Emile Sandé, and is performed by Alicia. Money. Some people are so poor, all that they've got is money. Oh, and diamonds. Some people waste their life counting their thousands. I don't care what they're offering, how much gold they bring. They can't afford what we've got, not even the king. They can't afford what we've got, not even the king. Ooh, castles. Some people so lonely. What good is a castle? Surrounded by people, but ain't got a friend that's not on the payroll. Oh, I don't care what they bring. They can have everything. They can't afford what we've got, not even the king. They can't afford what we got, not even the king. All the king's horses and all the king's men came charging to get what we got. They offered the crown and they offered the throne. I already got all that I want. All the king's horses and all the king's men, they came marching through. They offered the world just to have what we've got. But I found the world in you. I found the world in you. So darling, listen. Your arms around me are worth more than a kingdom. Yeah, believe that. The trust that we feel, the kings never felt that. Yeah, this is the song we sing. We don't need anything. They can't afford this. This is priceless. They can't afford what we've got, not even the king. They can't afford what we've got, not even the king. So, with those words as a backdrop, let's have a look briefly, there's more detail in the article, when someone leaves the family business and how the relationship changes. This is a direct quote from one of the reference sources, and it's from Forbes. The Harvard Business Review suggests that clarity is the key to knowing if you're in the right spot, even when you're working with brothers, fathers, mothers and sisters. Wouldn't it be great if it were that simple? Think about it. If you could write down your career goals and identify where they differ from your parents, would you know how to move forward? Not in a family business. Here's why. Because your father or mother is never going to let go of the reins no matter what you put on your magic list. His or her history of success is the last word in every argument. When the people who brought you up want to take you down, it's not a fun ride. Have you been there? Meanwhile, writing down your career goals isn't necessarily a bad idea. Just understand that making a list isn't the same as doing what your career deserves. Can you make the kind of impact you want at your family business, or is it time to leave the nest? The changing dynamics of sibling relationships in a business setting. This is an extract from a transcription of a conversation about women in business, particularly in family businesses. Well worth a read. I have only used a small section here to highlight the theme of this podcast and previous ones I have done, either in Sussex Global UK or in Meganpedia. In terms of the relationships between family members in the UK British royal family and their reaction to one of their number leaving that family. First quote. Today we are going to be talking about the sibling relationships in the family business and how they affect the family business in positive and maybe negative ways. Amy actually has a lot of experience in coaching people through difficult relationships or positive relationships in sibling dynamics. Amy tell us, what has your experience taught you in terms of the sibling relationships within the family business? What have been some of the most outstanding experiences and stories that you've heard? Amy. One of them is that I think siblings don't always appreciate how their relationships, even when they're kidding with each other, can affect the whole business. They can fight, they can laugh, they can struggle competitively, and they don't realise all the time that their every movement is being watched, and that sometimes the way they relate to each other can be replicated amongst teams in other groups in the organisation. So that's one thing that I think I've become aware of as almost a blind spot in some of the sibling relationships that I've heard about and tried to tell people to work on. The journalist. Actually, you mentioning that makes me feel like I need to go back and have a talk with my sisters, because we probably and most definitely do that. There are way too many inside jokes in our daily work life between us. So what do you feel the effect of that could be? Does it make others feel locked out of communication, or is it something that could negatively impact the environment? Amy. I've seen both. I think that inside jokes, which are playful and fun, can have a wonderful effect on an organisation, because there's just that sense that at the top of the organisation, or the future of the organisation, there can be play, they can have fun. There can be disagreement, and there can be a shared sense of a commitment to a mission. So that can be reassuring. Of course, the other side is that it could cause a great deal of anxiety and concern about, particularly if it's a second generation. What will happen when there is no longer that trusted leader? And now we have a group running the business. That transfer from one person, often the father at this point, to a sibling team can be a little disorientating for people, in a sense of who's really in charge. The reporter. Let's expand a little bit on that. Because I think you've touched on a superbly important word here, and that's team. So how do you create a team spirit between siblings? Because I think being a family member in a family business, of course, I know this, that when we enter the family business as a second generation or third generation, everything changes in terms of our family dynamics. Our perceptions of each other change. Our expectations change very dramatically. You have to almost relearn each other entirely. So whatever you thought was true about the other person, let's put it this way. If you're not open to relearning it, you're going to get into a head-on conflict with everyone. Because everyone is a different person in the workplace. Sometimes, as they are in private life as well. So while the founder is there, while the incumbent generation is there, our relationships are very much defined by them setting certain rules or certain expectations. What happens when that founding generation is gone is those expectations get transferred to and between us. How have you seen siblings react to that transition where they're suddenly confronted with, well, there's no older generation anymore, so it's up to us. How have they dealt with that? Amy. Well, certainly in the beginning, when the transfer occurs, the older generation might still be there in some way, shape or form, either coming in periodically or connecting with his or her children. Reporter. You're taking a very Western approach, Amy, because trust me, most of our culture that we know is that you leave the business when you're dead. That's it. There's no transition. Next section. Ultimately, the workforce is a mirror image of the manager above them, all the way to the chief exec. Whilst reading through a number of articles for potential reference sources, a number of them reinforced a point for me, one in particular. When I read the piece above, Are We Women in Business?, it made me think of the dynamics of the British royal family with each other, but how it can impact on staff, who then begin to act and do and say the things that the family members are saying and doing. If this area of research is a real possibility, and it is, and many research papers published under general management theories, then one could argue that the behaviour of, for example, courtiers and the royal household in general were merely replicating what the royal family members say to each other, along with the accompanying behaviour. There is plenty of research in the business world about behaviour of staff in any medium to large organisations. The members of staff will behave in a way that their manager will not have a problem with. Otherwise, they would not do it. Likewise, the manager of that manager is in the same position. Ultimately, research results have proven that no matter the level in the structure of the employee, ultimately the behaviour and the ethical behaviour of the most junior member of staff ultimately reflects the values of the CEO at the top of the business pyramid. Not rocket science, then, to see that when Meghan entered such a lion's den, she would have been crushed, or there would have been a tragic end at some point. That volume of animosity and organised hate campaigns, including paid trolls on social media, which politicians around the world use the same tactics too, clear evidence of those occurrences, that existed in every sphere of her life, were all operating under the consent, knowledge of the immediate line manager the perceived leaders in the family. Next heading. The monarchy is using obsolete methods to rid themselves of their perceived threat to their way of life, something that has operated with only minor changes to its delivery over 1,000 years. What the British royal family and the rest of the establishment have managed to do is speed up the demise of the UK monarchy. All monarchies are on borrowed time, but the indicators are that there are a few who are deemed to be a certainty to be in the next phase of monarchies which will come to an end sooner rather than later. What the current royal family have managed to do, all by themselves, is bring their demise forward by years. There is clearly only one strategy known and employed in the UK royal circles, and that is the hunter and prey approach, i.e. seek and destroy. There always seems to have a need for a distraction chew toy in royal circles to use as some kind of bait for the fictional baited dogs, who are trained in such tactics and led to believe that it gives you status in royal circles if you can devise processes and methods to work behind the scenes to destroy another person who is seen as a threat or who is not liked, because they outshine the air, and if that person ticks both those boxes and is also highly intelligent and is female and is black, then all manner of resources will be pulled together to ensure the desired outcome is achieved. From an outside perspective, I believe that funds that should have been allocated to Meghan upon marriage, like all the people who marry into the British royal family, Harry actually said in the March 2021 interview that he was informed that Meghan could perhaps return to acting in order to be able to fund the inevitable expenses because there was no money left in the accounts for her. Was used to pay salaries of certain individuals to bring Meghan down in some shape or form, no matter if the person was dead or alive. If the latter would have happened, then it would be just as false as the rhetoric that came out of the palaces and the UK media platforms in their reporting without any guilt that they knew, that the public knew, how badly they had treated Diana for years. The same would have been done with Meghan, and like Diana, the UK media would have made vast amounts of money from the death, and to this day they still do. Whether it be a documentary or an article, all of it done for financial gain, and zero responsibility for the huge part they played in her suffering and ultimate death. What they did not expect with Meghan is that Harry knew the format that was used on his mother, and he recognised the pattern emerging with his wife. So he left. No matter how much the official line is, he chose to leave, so therefore should lose this and that, as if those things, whilst hurtful in some cases, were not the things that motivated Harry or Meghan, or most people around the world, whether affluent or living from day to day. Titles and tiaras and status are very much a British thing, and some would walk over broken glass to be seen part of that society. Meghan entering such space and being used to the finer things of life, gained from her own hard work, and the same for her mother, was not swayed by castles and palaces. Meghan could buy those things for herself, and did, and for her not to be impressed by it, or prepared to devalue herself, just so she could stay in this opulent plantation behind gilded gates, and be treated like the house slave, ruffled royal feathers. How dare she not be grateful for us to allow her into this space? And how could she also wish to be treated like us white people, etc.? Meghan and Harry are made of substance, not fakery. There is no smoke and mirrors needed for the effect. They are what you see, and they are the main reason that I recalled this song from Alicia Keys from 2012, because it sums up this pomp and ceremony family who behind closed doors are no better than a cult, and they are a dysfunctional and abusive family. The only difference between them and Meghan's father's side of the family is that the UK royals receive way higher amounts of welfare payments. I won't venture into shady deals, but needless to say, I believe both families are cut from the same cloth. It is just that one family has more cloth and larger sizes to work with. So with that, let's look again at the lyrics of this song. Money. Some people are so poor, all they've got is money. Oh, and diamonds. Some people waste their life counting their thousands. I don't care what they're offering, how much gold they bring. They can't afford what we've got. Not even the king. They can't afford what we've got. Not even the king. Oh, castles. Some people so lonely. What good is a castle? Surrounded by people, but ain't got a friend that's not on the payroll. Oh, I don't care what they bring. They can have everything. They can't afford what we've got. Not even the king. They can't afford what we've got. Not even the king. All the king's horses and all the king's men came charging to get what we've got. They offered the crown and they offered the throne. I already got all that I want. All the king's horses and all the king's men, they came marching through. They offered the world just to have what we've got. But I found the world in you. I found the world in you. So, darling, listen. Your arms around me, worth more than a kingdom. Yeah, believe that. The trust that we feel, the kings never felt that. Yes, this is the song we sing. We don't need anything. They can't afford this. This is priceless. They can't afford what we've got. Not even the king. They can't afford what we've got. Not even the king. So, what with our look at how relationships can alter within a family when one member of the family leaves to go set up on their own. There is also evidence that it is possible to split the relationships into sibling and business partner as and when it suits during the working day. But when in a home environment, family values should be apparent. I am not sure that the British royal family know how to operate as a family. because family members still have to curtsy to the Queen, even if they're coming for tea and cake. The rigid rules of how and when people can do things at these so-called family gatherings. And remember, King George VI was the first person to refer to the British royal family as the firm. So that in itself speaks volumes. I can only see family members pitted against each other, encouraged by hereditary monarchy system, and the next two heirs, as well as both trying to be in charge of the other's destiny, they both have a priority to try and destroy the one who dared to walk away from the mess. And the obvious growing risk to the life of his wife and children, and to Harry by default. So rather than concern themselves with matter of state, they are focused on the next trickery, fakery, which involves causing harm or damage to the Sussexes. Typical cult, mafia-like behaviour, not typical family behaviour, even when they fall out with each other. It would do good for the second in line to receive some personal development on a wide range of fronts, before he becomes a lost cause to try and rehabilitate himself. For it to be successful, he has to admit that there is an obvious problem there that needs sorting. Using public funds to create an industry of hate that its intent is to destroy a family member and his nuclear family, simply because he dared to leave, and worse, they are extremely successful, without all the trappings and paraphernalia of the opulence of the plantation behind those gilded gates. It seems like some members of the royal family are offended that the Sussexes have walked away from all that they hold dear and value, and a few, two in particular, are angry because, as well as the Sussexes walking away from all that they consider to be important to the future heirs, in order to continue the existence of the monarchy for centuries to come, they seem to have taken it as a personal dislike of them as individuals, one of those two in particular. It is worrying that just because someone decided to have a life outside of the firm, that it should also be taken as a personal insult to the family members. Why? Why can't someone leave the firm, but still have a relationship with family if they so wish? Or are they saying that the role of the British monarchy is to be like a Brady Bunch sitcom, where one of the main group of characters is the nation's media? Is that what this is all about? A facade? An upmarket reality show? In the bracket of Made in Chelsea series? Has the UK created a reality show based on a family who we are all meant to love the characters, but not really know the people? Because after all, they are characters who play a role, and we get to see a glimpse of what they want us to see. And they are figureheads of a nation, representing the stability of a nation that is wealthy and with a bit of performative charity work thrown in. I don't think any of those TV families receive public funds, and they do not involve real families and children brought into the world as part of ensuring the reality show has a future. And as far as I know, the actors are free to come and go, and not forbidden from leaving the studio other than for organised events outside. It is debatable whether or not the royal family could be likened to the Brady Bunch, or the Partridge Family, or possibly the Beverly Hillbillies. I've got the answer. How about a series called The Crown? Public funds to pay salaries for people to create crisis where none exists, and receive a high salary for doing so, including representing as a defence witness in a court case against a member of the royal family who pay the salary of the Kensington Palace employee. What kind of fakery is that? What kind of business management is that? What kind of protocol does that emanate from, where you employ someone to take down another member of the royal family? What kind of senior royal sanctions that kind of involvement in a court case? That another senior royal has commenced proceedings against the actions of one of the tabloids. Blurred lines does not even begin to cover that one activity, but it is the best I can say in this setting. The UK royal family and its media and friendly government officials never forget the revolving door of civil servants working in royal palaces and then returning to civil service or mystery employment abroad. Along with the aristocratic circles, are all doing a grand job of shortening the lifespan of the British royal family between them. Every boomerang of negative activity sent out to do harm to the Sussexes or the global support base returns to sender having gathered speed and strength and returns to sender publicly every time. Every hair the establishment harms on the Sussexes' heads, every poison arrow sent their way, just know every member of the global support base feels it too, and as a result, understand the ripple effect of the damage royalists are doing within nations around many, many parts of the world. For every high-profile global event that any of the Sussexes are invited to attend, just remember that their invites are based on ability and experience in many areas and topics of the business world. There is no copy and pasting needed here. They are authentic, and the global leaders who wish to sit and discuss serious matters do so based on evidence, and not a courtier's flyer published in a rag owned by friends and signed by the member of the royal family as if they are the author. Members of the royal family with fragile egos are on record as wanting to move the Sussexes to another continent at one point. Receipts exist, so no amount of memory loss by those who wrote about such things and who spoke with their chests puffed out in interviews trying to justify why the British royal family thought this would be a good idea for everyone concerned. Well, the Sussexes were forced out due to risk to life and limb, and now they reside on another continent. The royal family now have the spotlight they so craved, and yet they are encouraging coercive control activity across borders on a family of 4, where 3 of them are citizens of the country they now reside in, having spent 3 years abusing the mother of those children, who was a USA citizen on UK soil. The UK wishes to declare UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence, and develop its own version of human rights legislation. But someone in the palaces needs to revisit the activities against USA citizens on USA soil, never mind the 3 years' abuse beforehand in the UK. Cream always rises to the top. The Sussexes will be fine. I should not have to point out that the rise or the trajectory of the Sussexes glow-up in a global environment will never be dimmed by anything that the UK royal family does, and neither will the royal family shine brightly if they continue to use the same playbook. There is no spotlight invented that makes matte shine like gloss, or a plastic bead look like a pearl. A turd is still a turd, even when wrapped in glitter. That's the end of this week's podcast. Just to let you know that in the article, at the end of the article itself, there is the video of Alicia performing this song. That's it for now. As per usual, I look forward to hearing and reading your comments, and I shall be back next week. Speak to you soon. Bye from Ivy. Bye.